talking about the world-class frontline service system and how it applies to the CSR. One of the things that you have to remember is everything that we do in a day-to-day process is all about exceeding our customers' expectations in every area of the business. It doesn't matter if it's the technician, the home comfort designer, or the person in the office. Everything that we do is designed around the experience that we build for the customer. One of the other things you also have to remember is we provide more value than any of our competitors. And what that means to you is we do things for our customer that other companies in our area aren't going to do. You have to earn and respect the trust of everyone that you work with on a day-to-day basis, whether that's the owner of the business, the technicians, anyone else on the team, and especially the customers. You always want to keep your commitments, and this is a very tough thing to do because you're dealing with a lot of different people and a lot of different personalities. So one of the things to remember is if you tell a customer you're going to call them at 2:30, let them know the technician's going to be there at 3, you need to make sure that you keep that commitment. You have to deliver all of our solutions in a professional, trustworthy, and efficient manner. And the last thing you have to do is remember that we really have to deliver the kind of experience that the customer is not going to soon forget. We call it the Disney World experience. So, in a way, we're selling something. What do you think a CSR might sell? The CSR sells essentially appointments. We're selling time commitments to the customer. The dispatcher and marketing lead coordinator also sell appointments. The technician, they sell comfort, not only in the ways that they're presenting solutions to the customer, but also the ways that they're making the customer feel. And lastly, we sell peace of mind. Once again, not only that we're going to be there and fix it correctly, but we're going to be there on time, we're going to be efficient, and the customer is going to be comfortable with the technician that's going to be in their home. So this whole thing really all starts with the call taker. And one of the things that we really recommend that you do is try to relax. Also, you want to make sure that you're smiling. Think of the last time that you had a great customer service experience with someone on the phone. Could you feel that they enjoyed their job, and could you feel that they were smiling on the other end? And on the contrary, think of the last time that you had a bad customer service experience over the phone. You could probably tell that person was not having a good day. Maybe they didn't enjoy their job. So take time, decompress, and make sure that you're smiling when you answer the phone. There are a few different ways that you can do this. It's a great day at AirServe. This is Chris. How can I make you comfortable? It's a great day at AirServe. This is Chris. Make it your own, but once again, with the other videos, you're going to be able to see the different things that you can do to kind of make our AirServe scripting your own. So after you take the call, you're going to let the customer know that we're going to call up 30 minutes ahead of time. And essentially what that does is it allows the customer to not be locked into their home. So you can let the customer know, Mrs. Jones, we're going to be there at 3. What I'm going to go ahead and do is call you at 2:30 to verify that the technician's going to be at your home. What this allows you to do is it allows you to go pick up little Johnny. It allows you to go to the grocery store. The only thing that we ask is that you're anywhere from around 30 minutes from your home, so that way you can meet the technician. You have to let the service professional know any pertinent information, whether that's very special, specific driving directions, or make sure you go around the back of the house because she's got 14 cats and you don't want to walk through the front door. After the technician goes in the customer's home, we're going to assume that that technician did the world-class frontline service system completely perfect. The technician's going to let you know that they're done with the call. And you can do one of several things here. If it's not peak season, you can definitely call that customer back anywhere from 10 to 15 minutes after the technician leaves and do what we call a happy call. This allows you to do several things. You can spot check different things that your owner would like you to spot check, such as, Mrs. Jones, this is Chris with AirServe. We take our customer service very seriously. I wanted to call and ask you a couple questions. Do you have a brief moment? And then that allows you to ask anything from, did you think it was neat the technician used a floor mat? Or did you think it was neat that we use floor savers? And once again, this allows you to spot check to see if your technicians are actually doing that, because the customer will either say, yeah, I've never seen a service company do that, or they'll say, what doormat? So once again, this allows you to inspect essentially what you expect. Operation Synergy is an automated phone call, but it's a human voice. It goes out a day after the invoice is processed in ZWare. It's going to ask the customer 4 questions. How did you feel about the service of the person who answered the phone? How did you feel about the service of the person who was in your home? Was the value you received worth the money that you paid? And the last question, the big question is, would you recommend us to a friend or family? It takes less than a minute, and it gives us a gauge of how our customers feel of the kind of service that we're delivering to them. Once again, that's done automatically. So one of the things that you have to remember is what sets you apart from all your competitors. Now, it depends on various markets, but it doesn't matter if it's rural or a big city. You're probably looking at hundreds and hundreds of other heating and air conditioning contractors. What do you think makes us different from everyone else? Right? Remember we talked about that value bucket, filling that up. When a customer calls, they're not necessarily expecting a live human voice smiling on the other end. So we know if we answer the phone in 3 rings or less, that's going to be something that sets us apart because they're expecting the phone to ring and ring and ring. So there's a few things that we like to talk about, and one of those things is a moment of truth. A moment of truth is any time a customer has a moment, essentially, to form an opinion, positive or negative, about you and the company. And the very first moment of truth they have is when we pick up the line and say, "It's a great air serve. This is Chris. How can I make you comfortable?" That's a moment of truth. They're automatically making a decision about the company based on that very first interaction. The second moment of truth is when the technician pulls up to the customer's home and arrives at the doorstep. One of the other things that we like to go through is an unspoken question. And an unspoken question is a question or doubt that a customer has in his or her mind that they're not necessarily going to come out and ask you. An example of an unspoken question is this company reputable? Will they be around for another year? Are they going to charge me more because I've got a nicer car in my driveway than my neighbor? Are there criminals? Are they fly-by-night people? So once again, these are things that customers are thinking when they call you, but they're probably not necessarily going to ask. Now, a lot of what we do, we call unspoken answers, and those are verbal, in our case, verbal answers to those unspoken questions. So once again, our actions, our image with the technician, but our actions and the way that we talk over the phone is going to make a very big difference in letting that customer know that they called the right place. So one of the things you also have to remember as you're watching this video is I talk with my hands a lot. They say over half of communication is based on nonverbal cues such as body posture, what you do with your hands, and facial expressions. So essentially, talking to someone over the phone, only half of what you're actually trying to communicate back and forth is really getting delivered. So one of the things that you have to remember is that you have to choose your words very carefully. We really like to never try to say any negative words like can't, won't, don't. And remember, we are a heating and cooling company, but think of how many different meanings cool has. So everything that we do and everything that we say, we've got to choose and pick those words very carefully. Now we also have the 3 C's. The 3 C's are control, confidence, and competence. The 3 C's of being a very effective call taker. Let's go with control first. Control is being in control of the call. So think of the last time you were on a call with someone, or maybe in a face-to-face conversation, and they were firing off questions. Maybe it was your significant other and you were out late, but they were saying, where were you at? Who were you with? Why were you doing that? They were in control of that conversation because they're the one asking questions. So you will get customers calling in with a barrage of questions. What's your diagnostic fee? Why can't you get out here fast enough? And you've got to take control of that call and start asking them questions back. Confidence. Confidence is something extremely important. Once again, think back to maybe a customer service experience that you might have had where you could tell someone was new on the other end of the phone and they were stumbling, they were bumbling over their words a lot, and you could tell that they really weren't confident in what they were doing. You've got to be confident when you pick up that phone that we're going to be able to deliver some sort of solution through what we do to that customer. And the last thing is competence. You probably aren't going to be watching this video unless the person who hired you thought you were competent enough to do the job. But competence is knowing not only our industry. Now, you don't have to be a heating and air conditioning expert. I like to call it enough to be dangerous. And the owner will work with you on some very key terms, very basic things. But you also have to be familiar with our Z-Ware. And those videos are also available online in our training library. So you might be saying, how do I do this? Well, first things first, you've got to learn and know the world-class frontline system in and out. The other thing that you've got to do is repeat. This is just like sports. The more you practice, the better you're going to be at it. So repeat. You can role play with maybe a significant other, maybe another CSR in the office, maybe another team member, and use it. It won't work if you don't work it. So one of the things that you have to remember is that the more you use it, the more you practice, the better you're going to get at it. So let's talk about the customer expectation when they're calling us. Think about the last time you had a customer service experience with maybe a plumbing company or electrical company or the cable satellite company. Was that necessarily a positive experience? One of the things that we found over the years is that the service industry, good, bad, or indifferent, has a lot of negative connotations to it. There's a lot of fly-by-night guys. There's a lot of very dishonest contractors. So the customer's expectations when they call us, unless they've done business with us before, are usually typically set very low. So once again, we've got to fill that value bucket by doing things that other companies don't do. Think about if they are an existing customer, the last AirServe technician that was in their home. That's something to think about. Maybe we need to send a different tech out if they may have not had the best customer service experience. Maybe they absolutely loved Bobby and they have to have Bobby set back out again. So as the CSR or office manager, that's one of the things that you've got to keep in mind. The call taker's position, in my opinion, is the most important person in the company. And the reason being, if we're not able to book a call, nobody else gets to do anything. Our technicians don't get to go out and fix things. Our home comfort designers don't go out and get to design systems. So your success and what you're doing here in the training is a big key to the company's success. So we've talked about taking calls. Let's talk about dispatching calls. Now in some companies, CSRs and dispatchers are different people. In most companies at AirServe, the person who answers the phone is typically also going to be the person who dispatches. So the dispatcher, one of the things you have to remember is that you have to assemble all the information for your team. You've got to set the stage for the customer. We had talked about letting the customer know that we're going to be there 30 minutes ahead of time. That's setting the stage for our other team members. We're the hub of the business. I like to call it the air traffic controller of sorts. You're talking to the owner, you're talking to customers, you're talking to technicians, you're talking to your home comfort designer, you're talking to supply houses. So you're really the hub of the business. You've got to monitor the results and watch over it. If a technician sends an invoice back and it's not completely filled out, you've got to let the technician know they're not going to get dispatched a call until that invoice is properly filled out. Ability to make decisions on the fly. And this, once again, this is going to be something that you need to discuss with the owner of the business, but you've got to be able to make schedule changes or maybe refund a diagnostic fee. Ability to make changes on the fly, and that's one of the things that is going to set you apart from other heating and air conditioning businesses. So as a dispatcher, and while you're dispatching, you've got to definitely obviously have great phone skills. You've got to be able to work with the technicians because technicians are going to try to push you. They're going to try to get more than one call at a time. They're going to try to figure out what's going on, and you've got to hold your ground and be firm and follow the world-class frontline service system. We talked about providing all the pertinent information to the technicians. Maybe what happened the last time we were out at the customer's home. Maybe prior recommendations that we made. Once again, we had talked about maybe we may not get the best GPS or cell phone signal, so maybe they need very specific directions. We need to make sure that we've got knowledge of the service area. As the dispatcher, you need to make sure that you're not only sending the right technician to each job, you also have to make sure that we're not sending somebody from the north end of town all the way to the south end of town, all the way back up to the north end of town, and so on and so forth. We need to make sure that we're dispatching them effectively and getting probably the closer technician to that next customer's job. We've got to check and make sure that all of our team members are always keeping the customer first. And once again, that's anything from Operation Synergy to making those happy calls to customers to making sure that they were definitely, that our service definitely exceeded their expectations. We've got to confirm all appointments ahead of time. If you tell the customer that you're going to call them 30 minutes ahead of time, you most definitely have to do that. If you tell them that you're going to call them 30 minutes ahead of time and the technician isn't ready to go to the customer's home, you need to let the customer know, Mrs. Jones, Bobby was on an emergency call. We had planned on being at your home at 3. It's taken him a little bit longer. It looks like we're going to be there at 3:30. Does that time still work for you? So one of the other things that we've got to do as the office staff is we've got to make sure that all of our team members are following the world-class frontline service system. Now this here is an example of what a AirServe technician should look like. One of the things that you'll notice is he's clean shaven, he's got a neat pressed uniform, his shirt is tucked in, he has no face metal, so no earrings, no nose rings, no lip rings, no visible tattoos showing. This is what our customers expect. The reason why our customers expect this is because this is what we advertise. This is all over the internet. This is going to be in the yellow pages. This is going to be in mailers. This is what they're expecting out of an air-served technician. And in the office, most offices I see, the owner will let the office know if a technician doesn't look like this, you can't dispatch them to the next job until they do. So you'll notice he'll either have no hat, and if he does, or she, they'll have an AirServe logoed hat. They'll have that clean, neat appearance, no Duck Dynasty beards. They'll have unique uniforms with their name badge, and the photo ID badge is very important to the customer because one of the things that they do when they open the door is they're going to say, well, Chris told me that Bobby was coming to the house. They look at the name badge, see that it's Bobby, gives them a little bit more peace of mind. So we talked about that moment of truth. The first initial impression is with you, the call taker. The second impression is with the technician. This is an example of a van, but one of the other things as an AirServe owner is if the vans don't look neat inside and out, a technician should not be dispatched to a job. The reason being is this is showtime. The technician's out at the house. Hopefully you provided that world-class frontline service system to that customer, so they're actually excited to have a heating and air conditioning company out. And what do you think would happen if they showed up in a dirty van and stuff was falling out of the door when the technician showed up? Right? It's not filling that value bucket. It's not exceeding any expectations. So we need to make sure that our team looks and dresses the part. So here are a few signs to look for that the technician's world-class frontline service system isn't being delivered correctly. Customers are calling in complaining that prices were too high. That could be a symptom of several things. Either the technician was supposed to spend several hours out there and they performed the job too fast and didn't do the world-class frontline service system. They could do what we call bump and run, which is go and do the job as quickly as possible, don't explain anything to the customer, just give them a bill and leave. If the tech runs more than 4 calls in 8 hours, then they're probably not following the world-class frontline service system. Much like our system, they have very specific things that they need to do with the customer. And if they're not doing those things, then they're going to be wanting a lot more calls than 4 or 5 in a very, very busy day. If technicians aren't getting referrals or customers asking specifically for them, they're probably not delivering the world-class frontline service system. One of the things that we know through years of data is the great technicians who deliver the right service that we expect are going to get customers not only calling and saying, Bobby was over at Mrs. Jones's house, she said he was an amazing technician, I want Bobby to come to my house, or when Mrs. Jones calls back for a tune-up, she will probably request Bobby if he delivers that kind of experience. If they say no for a proactive tune-up call, that is, they're an Advantage Plan customer, it's time to service their unit, and for whatever reason they say no, that's a sign that they're probably not delivering the world-class system that we expect them to. So some vocabulary to look at while we go through this. One of the things that we use to grade how an office person answers the phone is a call-to-close ratio. And a call-to-close ratio is essentially define if we have an opportunity, and if it is, were we able to book the call. Call-to-close ratio is very easily done. We can find the call-to-close ratio by doing what we call grading. And you can grade a call positive, you can rate it negative, and you can rate it neutral. It's very, very easy. Positive is someone who calls in for one of our services and you're able to book the call. Negative is someone who calls in for our services and for whatever reason you couldn't book the call. Whether we couldn't overcome objections, we couldn't get a technician out there fast enough. Whatever it may be, they called in for our service and you didn't book it. Neutral is someone who didn't call in for our services. So telemarketers, your husband or wife, technicians, all of those calls that aren't for goods or for our services are neutral. You take the neutral calls, you throw them out, you take the positive versus the negative, and that gives you a good call to close ratio. Something to strive for is 75% or higher. VoIP is a term that you'll hear not only throughout this video, but while you're using the systems that you have there in your local office. VoIP stands for Voice over Internet Protocol. It's essentially internet phones. So we have several VoIP providers, and we do have providers that will actually integrate with ZWare. I call it caller ID on steroids. So essentially, if you've got one of our preferred vendors and you're using their VoIP phones, as soon as you pick up the phone, if we've got that phone number in our database, all of the customer's information is going to pop up. Their work history, what technicians were in their home. So it enables you to not only pull up that information automatically, but now you can have a very intelligent conversation with that customer and make them feel like they're at home. Empathy is also something that I like to really define because, in my opinion, there's a difference between empathy and sympathy. And sympathy is I feel sorry for you. Empathy is I feel sorry with you. So one of the things that we have to do on the phone is we have to make sure that we're empathetic with the customer. Mrs. Jones, I'm so sorry to hear that. I know what it feels like to be in a very hot home. Don't worry, you called the right place. Be very empathetic with their situation. So let's talk for a minute about what it costs to make the phone ring. Now, while you're on the phone on a day-to-day basis, this might be something that you forget. But believe it or not, most owners spend anywhere from 6 to 12% of their total revenue on marketing and advertising to make sure the phone rings. What that means very easily is if you work at $1 million company, the owner has typically spent anywhere from $60,000 to $120,000 on marketing and advertising to ensure that the phone rings so we can get our technicians and home comfort designers and customers home. So depending on the source, it can cost really anywhere from $500 to $150 when a potential new customer calls in. So keep that in mind as you're answering the phone. Maybe you had a bad evening, maybe you had a bad morning, but remember, every time the phone rings, you can essentially think of it as a $50 bill. So we have to make sure that we take our job very seriously and that we try to capture each and every customer that calls in. Some other things to think about while you're having discussions with your owner is what are you going to do during peak season and non-peak season? A very good example is there are quite a few air-served shops that in non-peak season, which typically means the spring and fall, if the dispatch board isn't filled up by 2 o'clock or 1 o'clock, they'll let their CSR and their office staff waive a diagnostic fee to get the technicians into the customer's home. So what are you going to do during peak and non-peak seasons? Let's talk a little bit about value differentiators. We need to speak to the customer in benefits, not features. So what's a benefit versus a feature? When you're going to buy a new car and you've got all these features that are listed on the sticker of the window. Well, a lot of that stuff, sometimes you have no earthly idea what it means. But what are the benefits of some of those? So a feature in a vehicle would be hands-free talking. The benefit of hands-free talking is, obviously, now you've got both hands on the wheels. So we need to speak in benefits, not features. We have to let the customer know over the phone that we're gonna make them feel safe. We got to let them know that they're going to get what they paid for and that they called the right place. But we can't necessarily do that with those unspoken questions that they have. You can't just say, Mrs. Jones, none of our technicians do drugs. We're going to charge you just what we charge everyone else. You have to make sure that through the way that you compose yourself, we are able to essentially break down those barriers. So let's talk about tools for effective call taking. We talked about asking questions. Remember, the person who's asking questions, that's the one who's in control of the call. We also want to make sure we never ask what we call closed-end questions. A closed-ended question is a yes or no question. Remember, we're trying to develop a relationship with this customer. And the more that you're able to continue that dialogue back and forth by open-ended questions instead of closed-ended questions, you're going to be able to develop that relationship a lot easier. We talked about being empathetic. We have to make sure that we let the customer know that essentially we feel their pain and they called the right place. It's also very good to paraphrase back to the customer what they're saying. That's called active listening. So once again, there's probably a difference between hearing and listening. Hearing is, yes, I hear you. Listening is repeating back to them essentially what they're saying. We also always want to offer choices. We are in a demand-driven business, but you can't assume that the customer wants you out there right away. So we always want to offer the customer choices. Mrs. Jones, is 3 or 5 this evening better for you? Is tomorrow morning or tomorrow afternoon better for you? You can't just assume that the quickest appointment is the one that's going to best fit their schedule. So let's talk about those key performance indicators. You can jot down a few of these. So number of times the actual phone rings. We know through years of data that we already exceed the customer's expectations if we answer the phone in 3 rings or less. That's the magic number. We talked about call to close ratio. A good benchmark is 75%. But once again, you're not going to get there or exceed that unless you go through these training videos, practice, repeat, and then use these training videos as a referral. Advantage plan sales. For our technicians, we're looking for 40% of the time that there's an opportunity. So if the customer doesn't have an advantage plan, 4 out of every 10, we need to make sure that we're holding those technicians up to those expectations. Time on the call. Time on the call is something that's very important. We had talked about anywhere from 4 to 5 calls in a day, depending on what the technician's hours are. So as the office manager, we need to make sure that we're not letting those technicians run more than those amount of calls, because we know that they're probably not delivering that kind of service that we expect them to. So one of the things as you're going through these training videos, I want to make sure that you remember when you're talking with the customer, these 3 things. These are the 3 things that I see CSRs around listening to calls forget most often. The first one is, Mrs. Jones, where did you find our phone number today? Remember we had talked about anywhere from 6 to 12% of our total revenue is spent on marketing and advertising? We need to make sure that we're getting the best return on investment, and the only way that we can do that is if you ask the question, Mrs. Jones, where did you find our phone number today? The last thing that I see missed the most often by CSRs is, Mrs. Jones, when the job is completed to your satisfaction, how will you be paying with us today? We take Visa, MasterCard, check, etc. This allows the technician to know that as soon as they're done with the job, he can go ahead and ask Mrs. Jones for that Visa that she said that she was going to be paying you with today. So one of the last things that we have to do is make sure that we tell the customer thank you. We've already established that customers have hundreds of other choices of opportunities to call other companies. So we need to let the customer know that they can call us back at any point in time. So what you need to do is repeat your name to the customer after you thank them, give them the main line, and let them know that that's your direct line and they can call you back at any given point in time. This concludes this portion of the training. I hope you not only found this informative, but I really hope you come back and use this as a resource, maybe every month, every other month, because once again, the more you use this, the more you practice, and the more you train, the better you're going to be at your job.